The Forgotten Children. The galaxy had forgotten the taste of war. For 300 cycles, peace stretched across the spiral arms like a blanket woven from diplomacy and mutual fear. The great powers, the Velkari Dominion, the Ashton Confederacy, and the Gen Collective, held their territories with careful claws. Trade routes hummed with commerce. Border disputes ended in negotiation chambers, not battlefields. No one spoke of the humans anymore. They had been there once. Everyone agreed. Third arm of the spiral, a minor species with a handful of colonies and an irritating habit of asking questions no one wanted answered. Then, without warning or explanation, they vanished. Their colonies went silent. Their ships stopped appearing at trade stations. When scout vessels finally ventured to Earth, they found empty cities and abandoned orbital platforms, still humming with power but devoid of life. The humans had simply left. Theories multiplied like bacteria. Some said they'd achieved transcendence, ascending to a higher dimension. Others believed they'd fled to another galaxy, running from some terrible secret. The Velkari maintained they'd destroyed themselves in a civil war, though no wreckage supported this claim. Eventually, the theories faded too. The humans became a curiosity, then a footnote, then nothing at all. The galaxy moved on. 300 cycles of peace made the younger species soft. They'd never known the brutal mathematics of survival that had once governed the stars. War became an abstract concept, something studied in historical archives by academics who'd never felt a plasma bolt scorch the air beside their heads. Then the signal came. It arrived. Simultaneously at every major communications hub in the galaxy, a burst of data so massive it overloaded relay stations and crashed networks across a dozen sectors. No one had seen transmission power like this since the ancient wars. The signal contained no words, no images, no identifiable language, just coordinates. A location in the deep void between spiral arms, where no stars burned and no civilized species had ever bothered to venture. The kind of place that existed only on navigational charts as empty space. The Velkari sent 3 heavy cruisers to investigate. They never reported back. The Ashton dispatched a battle fleet. Their final transmission lasted 4 seconds. Screaming and the sound of hull metal tearing like paper. The Gen Collective, always the most cautious, sent a single stealth reconnaissance vessel, equipped with every sensor known to science. It returned, but its crew never spoke again. They stared into nothing, their minds broken by something they wouldn't or couldn't describe. The analysts who reviewed the vessel's data logs resigned within days. Some fled to the furthest reaches of civilized space. One threw herself from an observation deck into the void. The recordings were sealed by unanimous vote of the Galactic Council. But information has a way of leaking, especially when it concerns survival. What emerged from those sealed files came in whispers, fragments, incomplete horror. Something vast moved in the deep dark, something that bent space-time itself. The sensor readings made no sense. Mass readings that exceeded stellar objects compressed into impossible densities. Energy signatures that suggested technology, so advanced it might as well be called magic, and it was moving toward the galaxy slowly, deliberately, with the patience of something that had already consumed 1,000 galaxies and had eternity to consume 1,000 more. The great powers convened an emergency session on Velkara Prime, the first time all 3 had met in person in over a century. Behind closed doors, they faced a truth none wanted to speak aloud. They had no idea how to stop it. Their weapons, designed for territorial disputes and pirate suppression, seemed like toys compared to what was coming. Their defensive networks built to repel conventional attacks wouldn't even slow it down. Their intelligence agencies, accustomed to monitoring rival powers, had no framework for understanding something so alien. Panic spread like fire through dry grass. Colonies on the galactic rim began evacuating toward the core. Military shipyards worked triple shifts, building vessels everyone knew would be useless. Scientists proposed increasingly desperate solutions. Superweapons that would take decades to build, exotic physics that might work in theory, retreat plans that involved abandoning entire sectors. The Velkari suggested surrender, though no one knew how to surrender to something that hadn't communicated demands. The Ashton prepared for a last stand, though no one believed it would matter. The Gen simply calculated survival odds and found them approaching 0. It was the Velkari ambassador who first said it. during a late-night session after the official talks had stalled. She'd been reviewing ancient files, searching for anything that might help. Historical records, old wars, extinct species. We could try to find the humans, she said quietly. The chamber fell silent. They vanished 300 cycles ago, the Ashton representative said. They're gone, dead, ascended, does it matter? They survived the border wars, the Valkyrie ambassador continued. Remember? 4 major powers tried to annex their territory simultaneously. The humans were outnumbered 50 to 1, outgunned, outmaneuvered. Everyone expected them to surrender within weeks. They held for 3 years, the Gen delegate added slowly, his crystalline structure pulsing with reluctant memory. They adapted, learned, found ways to turn our advantages into weaknesses. By the end, we were the ones asking for peace. Exactly, the ambassador said. They understood war in a way we never have. Not as politics or territory, but as survival itself. If anyone in this galaxy knows how to fight something impossible, she didn't need to finish. The next day, the Galactic Council issued a priority alpha transmission on every frequency known to science, broadcasting into the void where humanity had vanished. It was simple, desperate. Come back, please, we need you. No one expected an answer. But 3 days later, on the edge of the Terminus Nebula where the last human colony had once thrived, something stirred. Ancient deep space monitoring stations abandoned for 3 centuries suddenly powered up. Navigation beacons that had been dark for generations began broadcasting new coordinates, and a transmission came through, crackling with age and distance in a language the galaxy had almost forgotten. We heard you. We're coming home. The return they came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The first sign was the gravitational anomalies, subtle warps in spacetime that appeared simultaneously across 30 systems. Then came the heat signatures, massive thermal blooms that shouldn't exist in the cold of deep space. Finally, the visual confirmations that made even hardened military commanders question their sensors. Ships. Thousands of them. But not like any ships the galaxy remembered. The human vessels of 3 centuries ago had been functional and unimaginative, geometric shapes optimized for efficiency, covered in sensor arrays and weapon mounts that broadcast their purpose. These new ships were different. They moved like living things, their hulls flowing with patterns that hurt to watch too closely. They didn't just travel through space. They seemed to fold it around themselves, appearing and disappearing in ways that violated half the known laws of physics. The Valkyrie fleet that encountered them first near the Terminus Nebula didn't know whether to fire or flee. They did neither. Their targeting systems couldn't lock on. The human ships existed in normal space and somewhere else simultaneously, flickering between states faster than sensors could track. Energy readings spiked and disappeared. Mass calculations changed moment to moment. Finally, a communication came through. Valkyrie vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. Stand down. We're not here for you. The transmission was clean, no lag despite the distance. The Valkyrie commander, a veteran of 40 cycles of peacekeeping, found his mandibles trembling. Captain Chen, he managed. The council sent out a call. We didn't know if— We know, Chen interrupted. We've been monitoring. We saw what's coming. Then you'll help us. There was a pause. When Chen spoke again, something cold ran beneath her words. Help implies you have something we want. Right now you're just in the way. But yes, we'll deal with the threat. It's headed for Earth and we don't share. The line cut out. The human fleet didn't wait for permission or coordination. They simply moved, their ships transitioning through space in ways that made Ashton physicists weep and Gen mathematicians question their understanding of reality. Within hours, they'd established a presence in every major system, not asking, just arriving. At first, the galactic powers tried to maintain some illusion of authority. The Valkyrie demanded the humans submit to council oversight. The Ashton insisted on joint command structures. The Gen calculated resource-sharing protocols. The humans ignored all of it. They set up orbital installations around dead worlds, massive structures that grew from seed ships like metal forests. They deployed sensor networks that made existing early warning systems look like children's toys. They established defensive perimeters around core worlds without consulting local governments, and when those governments protested, they received the same response. You can complain after we save your lives. The arrogance should have sparked outrage. Instead, It sparked something the galaxy hadn't felt in 3 centuries. Hope. Because when the human ships moved, they moved with purpose. When they deployed with precision. Every action suggested a plan, a strategy, an understanding of warfare that the great powers had forgotten existed. The Gen were the first to swallow their pride and ask for details. "Where have you been?" the collective's representative demanded during an encrypted transmission. 300 cycles of silence, and now you return like you never left. What happened to your species? The human who answered, a woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen things the Gen couldn't imagine, smiled without humor. "We left because we had to. The galaxy was at peace, and peace makes humans complacent, soft. We remembered what it was like before you all decided war was too expensive. We remembered the species that didn't survive because they forgot how to fight. So you, trained? For 300 cycles? We evolved," the woman said simply. "Your species reached peace through exhaustion. You fought until no one had the strength to continue. But humans, we reached for something else. We went deep into the voids between galaxies, into places where survival itself was a battle. We pushed ourselves against things that would have destroyed your civilizations in hours. And we learned. Learned what? That peace is a luxury purchased with strength. That mercy is a gift only the powerful can afford. That the universe doesn't care about your treaties or your councils or your carefully maintained balance. It only cares if you can survive what it throws at you." The transmission showed something then, a brief glimpse of what lay beyond the woman. Not a ship's interior, but something else. Structures that shouldn't exist. Geometries that made the eye slide away. Darkness that pulsed with its own light. "You saw it too," the woman continued. "Whatever's coming from the deep dark. You sent ships and they didn't come back. You studied the data and your people went mad. You calculated survival odds and found zero." "Yes," the Gen admitted. "We're defenseless against it." "You are," the woman agreed. "But we're not. Because we've faced worse. In 300 cycles we've died and adapted and died again. We've lost entire colonies to things that make your incoming threat look predictable. We've learned to fight enemies that don't think like living things, that don't want territory or resources, that exist only to consume. And you can stop this one?" The woman's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "Stop it? No, we're going to kill it, and then we're going to find where it came from and kill everything else there too. Because that's what humans do best." The transmission ended. Within the week, the human fleet had consolidated its forces at the edge of civilized space, forming a defensive line between the galaxy and the approaching threat. Behind them, the great powers scrambled to evacuate their rim worlds and fortify core territories. Military analysts tried to understand human tactics and gave up in frustration. The humans fought like nothing in the databases. No formation templates. No predictable patterns, just constant adaptation. One Velkari admiral, watching human ships maneuver during a training exercise, finally understood. "They're not fighting like an army," he said to his staff. "They're fighting like a swarm, like prey animals that evolved into predators. Every ship independent but coordinated, every captain empowered to adapt. No rigid command structure to break." "How do we counter that?" his tactical officer asked. "We don't," the admiral said quietly. "We just hope they're on our side." The human perimeter held, growing stronger each day. Defensive platforms linked into networks. Fighter wings patrolled in patterns that seemed random, until you realized they covered every possible approach vector. Capital ships positioned themselves not for firepower concentration, but for geometric coverage, turning the entire defensive zone into a three-dimensional death trap. And at the center of it all, on the largest human vessel, a dreadnought that dwarfed anything the galaxy had built, Captain Chen stood in a command center that looked nothing like the bridge of a military ship. It resembled a living organism's nerve center, all flowing surfaces and organic integration between human and machine. "Status?" she asked. "The entity will reach our perimeter in 48 hours, her tactical officer reported. "All fleet elements in position. Gen early warning network integrated with our systems. Velkari and Ashton forces maintaining secondary positions as agreed." "And our surprise?" "Ready, Captain." "Engineering confirms full functionality." Chen nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the approaching threat, a mass of dark energy and twisted physics that had already consumed 3 star systems on its journey inward. 300 cycles, she said softly. 300 cycles since we left. The galaxy thought we ran away, that we abandoned them or transcended or destroyed ourselves. They had no idea. No, ma'am. We didn't leave because we were afraid. We left because we saw what was coming, because our deep space probes found things in the dark between galaxies that made all our wars look like children playing. Because we knew that one day something would come for us, for all of us, and the galaxy would be completely unprepared. So we prepared, the officer said. We did more than prepare, Chen said. We transformed. We stopped being the species that asked questions and became the species that provided answers. Final answers. Permanent answers. She turned to face her crew. Dozens of humans working in perfect synchronization with machines that were as much alive as they were. When that thing reaches our line, it's going to expect what it's found everywhere else. Civilizations that don't understand real war. Species that fight with restraint and rules and mercy. Prey. Her smile was cold and bright as a star going nova. Instead, it's going to find humanity, and it's going to learn why, in 300 cycles of galactic peace, no one ever forgot to be afraid of us. The entity reached the human perimeter exactly on schedule, a vast distortion in space itself that moved with terrible purpose. The humans opened fire, and the galaxy finally understood why humanity had truly returned.